Welcome to the live stream, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is going to be a really casual Techno Patch Chat where the three of us are going to play for you some patches that we've created, and we're just going to get stuck into some casual conversation about techno and patching in general. It's going to be a fun stream today. I'd like to thank Trovarsi for helping out with the, for the camera bump there. I'd like to thank Trovarsi for helping out with the live streaming and the tech today and the behind the scenes good stuff. Let me go ahead and switch my camera over. We're going to go ahead and welcome PatchNode to the stream as well today and thank him for joining us. I hope you all can hear me on the stream today, and we're about to get started. Go ahead and comment if you can hear us and our levels are okay. And hey, we got Redneck Samurai and Ed and Jamie. Thanks for joining me, everyone. It's going to be a fun stream today, and we're going to get down with some serious techno patching. Welcome to the stream.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going? Everyone can hear me okay out there?
I got you loud and clear over here. Hey guys. Hey Brett, thanks for tuning in. Hey, we got Lee in the chat. Hey Tony. Thanks, Tony. All right. So let's go ahead and check out our patches today, guys. I've introduced what I've got in the system. Let's hear what you guys have got set up for us today.
All right. Craig, you want to?
Sure, I'll kick it off. I'll just play a simple little line I have going on. I have a lot going on within my patch, but yeah, we'll get to the intricacies of it later.
Awesome.
Sure. I'll go full screen so they can see here.
Perfect. All right, that's sounding great. I can't hear you, Trovarsi. I think you might be muted.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, all right. I'll just play my patch really quick, and then we'll get into the whole breakdown of it.
Awesome. right.
Awesome.
Did that get okay? Or
Yeah, that's sounding pretty good. Let's talk about what you guys are using for your drums to start off these patches.
all right.
Yeah, so I guess I can kick it off. Really, because I have a limited system. I try to make use of everything that I have. Primarily, I'm using the Bassimilis, the noise engineering Bassimilis Territas Alter, as like my kick drum source, and then I have in the top left, I have the Erica Synth sample drum. And it's really cool with the sample drum. I have many different things going on, but basically I write loops in Ableton that I then bring to the sample drum. I then slice them up within the actual module itself, and then I trigger it via variegate. So at any given point, I'll have either like a kick drum loop, hats loop, like a mixed percussion loop, and everything loop at once that I'm kind of like filtering in and out. In addition to that, I also have a bunch of like one-shot samples loaded into the sample drum,
Awesome.
kick drums, hi-hats, claps, all that kind of stuff. And then also with plats, if I'm doing a live set, plats by Mutil, whatever you want to call it. With plats, I'm alternating. It's really cool. It has like, I think, like 16 different models that you can alternate between. And the cool thing about that is I can use it simultaneously as a synth, like a synth voice, in addition to a drum voice. So I kind of have a bunch of stuff going on, and then everything's kind of running through various effects, if you guys can see, which I'll kind of get into later. But yeah, that's my
Are you switching the model mode back and forth on the plats to get the difference in sounds?
Yeah, so it really just depends. Like the right side of plats is all drum noises, like drum noises and kind of like bassy noises. And
Right.
it really just depends like what I have playing in sample drum, what Bassimilis is doing. I'll alternate between like synth voices and drums within plats. And then like the cool thing about it, like because I'm fortunate enough to have all these effects units, Qubit Prism, the Desmodus Versio by Noise Engineering,
Yeah.
the Mimeophone by Make Noise, and obviously, everybody's favorite, Clouds. I don't know if it's everybody's favorite, but yeah, I love Clouds. But the cool thing about that, I have each of my kind of like either synth voices or sample channels or Bassimilis running through its own individual effect. And with that, I can create like other artifacts. I can have like a hat coming from a kick if I'm sending it into Clouds via the Clouds mode, and depending on what position it's in, if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I kind of have a bunch of things going on when it comes to effects. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as drums are concerned. And then it's really cool. Like with sample drum, I can alternate between loops really easily. It's like the top left knob that I turn. Like I'll have everything labeled. Like if it's like a full beat, it's labeled as beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4.
Awesome.
It's labeled like that. And then also within sample drum, I have like synth lines or like synth stabs that I've written in Ableton that I brought into sample drum that I kind of like alternate between. So I have sample drum, as weird as it sounds, it's kind of the brain of whatever's going on during my like live sets, for the time being, at least until I get like a Squid Salampole with like 8 channel, whatever. Yeah, that's me.
All
I have a
right.
question for you. Are you using your voltage block as like sort of like a preset for the BIA? So you can change filters? Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, so voltage block, like it's crazy. I haven't used the actual preset functions of voltage block. Voltage block is just sending CV everywhere. And what I typically do is, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I have 8 stackable cables coming out of voltage block. I'm not really utilizing the stackables right now, but typically like, voltage block is 8 CV outs. I'll use 16 CV outs going to various areas of my case, right? But with voltage block, it's just a bunch of random CV going all over the place, whether it's to effects or, if it's modulating Bassimilis is a like fold function or like cycling through waves.
Is that clocked CV or is that not clocked CV signals?
It is. So the cool thing about voltage block, so I have in the bottom left Variegate 4 Plus, and they're obviously both by the same company. The fact that they're both connected to the same bus board Variegate being my main clock also automatically clocks voltage block. So it is clock C.
Oh, awesome. That
But
is very nice.
yeah, the other thing about voltage block is that I can send like alternate clocks. So like, for example, if I switch it, you can't really see it, but if you switch it to clock mode, I can have clock coming from like Noise Tools 1U by IntelliGel. I can have like a really fast clock, so the CV is alternating much quicker than the actual main clock.
Nice. Wow.
Can I ask a question? Let me ask you this. Have you had issues ever clocking your voltage block? I have. So have you at all?
I haven't had any issues. I think because I'm using it simultaneously with Variegate. I think at one point you were using Variegate 8 Plus, but honestly, I've never had clocking issues. It works. It works in conjunction with the Variegate because of the bus board connection, if you will. So what issues have you had clocking voltage block? Just in case.
It doesn't play nicely. Like it doesn't like play like in time. I mean, I can understand. I guess with the Variegate or the 4 or the 8.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you know what I mean. Using other devices, I've had issues with.
Yeah, I typically if I'm switching up clock that's being sent to voltage block, it's coming from Noise Tools 1U up in the 1U row top right. And typically it just depending on where my speed or beats per minute position is set on Noise Tools, it works, And I don't know, I like sending that faster clock to the CV to just switch things up a little bit, make it sound less static in certain parts. So yeah,
cool. All right, well, maybe it's just me. It's very possible too. It could very well be user error, I guess I could try it. Cool. Dean, do you want to talk about your drums? I noticed in the chat, let me look back. I think it was Ed or Brett. Hey, Brett. Thanks for joining us. I know you mentioned Rample or Erica synths. So I know that, obviously, Craig, you said you have the
both.
Yeah, I really like the Rample. I'm not really using much of it in this patch. I'm using it only like a tiny little bit to get a crash cymbal sample. That's kind of scrolling between a few different sounds. But hey, let me switch my camera and I'll talk about these drums a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Let me turn my volume up just a little bit. I'm getting the kick drum using the Blue Lantern Module's Assist module, which is basically like an envelope generator for dummies. It's got kind of like a pitch envelope as well as an amplitude envelope that allows me to plug it into any of my oscillators and generate a really fat kick drum sound. This is just a sine wave that we're running from the Dreadbox Hysteria module, turning it into this really fat kick drum. And what's neat about this is I've got a crash cymbal set to trigger every 8 bars to kind of help my momentum and whatnot. But I've done some neat stuff with the drums here. Let me go ahead and turn on some hats. I've got a hat sound here that it's just playing 16th notes hats based on my master clock. We're getting that from the Blue Lantern module's braids module. It's just a noise algorithm. Actually, what we're hearing now is from the 2 HP hats module, my bad, but I can switch back and forth, and that's the key here. I'm using, let's turn this down so I'm not yelling. I'm using this really awesome Dopefer quad switch where I'll plug in a trigger signal, and then there's a switch here, and it allows me to decide which output I'm going to route this trigger signal. So one output routes it into my braids module, which is playing a noise for the hi-hat, and I can turn this off using the quad switch, and then if I press down on the quad switch, it changes the hi-hat sound to a different module, which is doing a little bit of evolving on that hi-hat sound. So at any time during the patch, I can switch the hi-hat off or switch to a different hi-hat sound entirely.
Okay.
So that's kind of a fun one. And what I did that was really neat is I did a trick to help me with the ebb and flow on this patch, which is I took an output from a clock divider and I ran that into a second clock divider. So I'm really slowing down my master clock signal. And I'm taking outputs from that second really slow clock divider and I'm feeding it into a VCA. So every 8 bars, my clap is automatically turning on and off. And every 16 bars, my ride cymbal is automatically turning on and off. So if I just turn all the drums on again and remove my hands, and we wait just a moment, you can see that clap just went away. Let me patch that back up with my reset signal here. So here we've got the clap, we've got the ride, all my sounds are going, but without having to mute anything manually, we now have the clap turning on and off. And if we wait another 8 bars, my ride cymbal will turn on and off as well. I'm using a combination here of modules that are generating sounds in real time, as well as some sample modules to bring in like my hat and my claps sound. So I thought that was really fun, getting a little bit of the automatic ebb and flow using these really slowed down clock dividers to open and close the VCA in time with the beat, and then kind of automatically turn tracks on and off and get that sort of auto magic ebb and flow happening. If I had more VCAs, there would be more of that, but I only have one VCA module. I can't hear you, Craig.
Can I say something? Or can you hear me? Right.
Go ahead.
So you have the mimetic digitalis. Do you have, okay, so I know like you're using the tip top one there, you're using the sampler, right? I haven't
Yes.
used, are there so they're on there are like decay controls and
no, on the Tip Top Audio 1 samplers, they are super basic. You can load the benefit of these for me is the amount of samples that you can load into them, 256, and then you can just scroll through those in real time. So like if you have, 256 kick drums, for instance, you just start scrolling through them, something's going to jump out to you, you know what I mean? But on those, if you want any envelope controls, you have to run those through an envelope. The Ramble, on the other hand, does have some envelope controls, but they're not, I don't know, super awesome per se. They're just sort of like low-level envelope controls.
Yeah. Because I know, I think, did you have like a mimetic digitalis in your case?
I do. As a matter of fact, that's running my Bassline today. And as soon as we start talking about the bass, I'm going to be waxing philosophical about the mimetic digitalis because I love it.
I like to send some of those outs to like open and close like decays and things like that.
That's a great idea. I actually have a few that I'm not using, and I was looking for a signal to route into my extra hi-hat module to open and close it. So that's a great idea for that.
Cool.
So I just two things that kind of came to mind when you were kind of walking through your patch and how you approach drums, but I haven't really started exploring the world of like clock dividers, clock multipliers, and sequential switches. I'm gonna be getting I think it's the dope for sequential switch. I forget what the actual model number is, but like when it comes to live performance and just like either live performance, if you just want to set it and forget it, generative patch. I think having like a multitude of clock dividers, clock multipliers, and then sequential switches, kind of just cycling through your sequences, cycling through different clock divisions and stuff. So yeah, I have the ability to divide clock on the variegate and multiply clock on the variegate, but I don't know if you guys get the same thing, but I'm almost kind of like reserved when it comes to that kind of thing. I don't want my master clock to fall out of place while I'm playing live and everything to kind of like go to hell, but yeah, I don't know. Like I'd be interested to see like if you guys use sequential switches in your patches or in your cases and how you use them. that kind of
I've
thing.
looked at a sequential switch from WMD Devices. I can't remember the name right now, but based on the way Alex was using it in the video, I put it on my like want list and I kind of circled it and put some asterisks next to it. So I was pretty about it. I don't have one currently.
I want to know which one you're talking about. Maybe you can, while we're going through the show.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the WMD sequential switch, but like the most prominent one out there is the small like 4 HP Doepfer one that everybody seems to use. I think Mylar Melodies did a fantastic video on using sequential switches, and I'm not sure if he mentioned the use of clock dividers and multipliers, but like he kind of talks on how he performs techno live and how sequential switches play a part in that. So
yeah, he did. It was pretty awesome. He did
I'm personally always looking for ways to add like dynamics and like to your point while you were talking, you know, having those claps playing for X amount of bars and then switching off creates that kind of landscape, atmosphere, whatever. So it doesn't sound as static. While it's techno and it you know sounds static for the most part, we want it to kind of like switch up and alternate throughout. So anyways, get off my sequential switch.
It's the select module, actually. WMD select. It's got like 3 different switches. It looks kind of unassuming. But he used it in a way in a video that really stuck out to me. I can't remember that exactly, but enough for me to really write it down and underline it, you know?
Well, I guess I'll show you how I and then we'll get into, because I actually used Logic module.
All right.
That's like you kind of can get some more creativity and shuffle without actually having to program it.
Yes.
So, all right.
I'm going to switch cameras just for a second so I don't give you camera shake. And then let me kind of go back.
Thanks to everybody in the chat for kind of throwing out Red Means Recording and Colin Bender's doing you know, videos on clocks and dividers. I'm definitely gonna have to check it out, you know.
So okay, so can you guys see my system?
Yeah.
Is it better? Okay. So I'm using a few different things. I'll just talk about can you guys hear my hats and stuff?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm using the Squid Sample, one sound from the assimilator, and the Erica Synths hi-hats right now. I think that's what you should be hearing. And for me, a big shout out to Mystic Circuits, this Logic module.
Yes.
Can you see what I'm pointing at? And then the Zularic repetitor and the numeric repetitor. So this is the first Logic module actually I've ever used. I did a walkthrough with Omi Industries. We talked about Logic. We did a whole workshop for Perfect Circuit. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, like I've just been missing out on this whole other element of patching. And so this is my first Logic module, but how I'm using it, which is cool. Like, hang on, let me kind of turn up. Sorry, I can't hear my end. I can hear it. All right, cool. So basically what I'm doing is I initially took a sequence from the Metron, and then I took a clock out from the Metron and to send clock to both the numeric and the Zularic repetitors. And then what I did was I sent out one of their triggers into the input, one of Anna, and then the numeric repetitor into the input 2. So as you're listening, if I do this, now it's triggering every so often one of the outputs you can hear
on the assimilator,
on the assimilator, right? You hear the pattern changing?
Yeah. Ever so slightly, which is magical.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, which is great. So then I don't always have to jump over here and either sequence something specific and be specific about it. But one thing I really like to do with the Anno, which is in a live performance, like use that as A versus B kind of thing.
Yeah.
As I'm switching up, you know, like this is going. And then switch it, and then like. And then bring it back. But it's just a way to create variation, I think, without having to really try to sit there and program something. You can actually, you know, on the fly and have that improvisation, because or I can just change the pattern entirely, and then it will change everything that's happening on these two generators. So this is basically generating its own type of pattern. The Zularic is like world beats, new and old, you can choose. Whereas generic repetitor is more of like prime numbers. Sorry, I'm not really a math person, but it's awesome. It's doing. And then the Anna is basically taking the sum of those. And the one thing with Logic, it's like either minimum, maximum. You can do and or, which means it's like it's triggering one. If it's not triggering one, it's triggering the other. Yeah. And I don't know. I this is like my new thing now. This is like in my performance case now. This Anna.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like it sounds cliche, but it's like it's performable basically.
Sure.
As you're going, you're able to switch whatever knobs or turn whatever knobs, and you're kind of performing the different pattern switches with your Logic modules.
Yeah.
That tactile feel with modular is amazing. Anybody that doesn't have a modular case at home, save up and get a modular case, because your life will change.
Your life will change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So will your pocketbook, but it's all worth it. And then for my kick, right now I went with something a little more of a subtle kick, but I'm still using the BIA.
Yes.
I like to, you know, Dean and we just recently did a video on kick drums, and one thing, you know, if you want to beef it up, is run it through like a distortion module. But I mean, I think it's pretty well known module. I love it. But so I think that's pretty much. Do you guys have any questions about anything in my rack? I guess.
Yeah. So it's not really a question. Well, it's a question plus just something to say. So I was recently making a video on the WMD Metron and the Volterra for Chuck Levin's Music Center. And you know, I watched all of Alex Nasty Nacho's like 2.5 hours worth of walkthrough videos on the Metron and the Volterra.
Yeah.
You know, he covers everything to great detail. And he touches on the assign functions of the Metron. And just real quick, like, have you messed with the assign CV inputs on the Metron?
No, I have not messed with the assign in. No, I've patched out with the Volterra. I've done the probability, the ratcheting. I mean, again, this is just a way that like makes it super performable. But again, I'm sending the pattern out of here. So that's the one thing that's really cool about the Metron. You can change the length of the entire pattern or per pattern. It has ratcheting, probability. It's great because you can choose the gate length per step. It's
amazing. Burst. Random.
Exactly. I mean, and then the one thing I really love about it's like the fills.
Yeah.
Do you have to program its behavior before you can activate the fill like that, or is that something that's just sort of built in?
They have some built in, and you can see. I'm not sure if you can see here it says 4th, 8th, 16th, 32th.
Oh, cool.
You can change.
Oh, man.
They give you some, like they sort of like presets, you know, kind of, but then you can make your own, you know what I mean? But I mean, the ones that they made, I like them, you know, and I didn't spend time like kind of recreating a fill. I think they did a fantastic job with the ones that they included with it. So I use those. But Yeah, no, I do need to get into the assigning, and that's just like another. That just goes to show like this sequencer is pretty deep. This one, and then so for the Metron, I love using it for that purpose, like patterns, like drums, even decays, opening and closing decays,
Yes.
resets. I use them as like a reset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking my language. Hey, we lost your video, Trovarsi. We've lost your video. I got audio for you still.
Here, let me switch to this one for a second. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe my camera's being weird today. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I mean, I use the Metron mainly for that, and then I'm really getting into the 512 with melodic.
Yeah.
And we can get, when we get to the melodic part, we'll talk more about that.
Let's get to the melodic part. I'd love to get to all this stuff.
All right, cool.
Unless you guys have anything else to say about the drums or anything.
No, I mean, are there any questions in the chat? Like, hey, just
good call.
If you have questions for anyone, whether about their setup, what they're using.
Yeah, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat, guys.
So
I want to say one thing quick. To Ed in the chat, I'm pretty sure, Ed, it's you that recommended me to get this module. I think
what is that?
It's the Patching Panda filter.
Uh-oh. What is that, your 16th filter?
You said to pick it up and run the BIA through it. It's magic. So I took his advice. So I hope this is the right Ed. But yeah, so I'll have to get back to you and let you know how that goes with the kick.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just kind of switch places here. All right, cool. We'll talk amongst yourselves for a second while I switch.
Yeah, let's talk about bass for a little bit. Craig, you want to start us off and talk a little bit about what you've got for bass in your patch there?
Yeah, so I'm using the Bassimilis. I'll try to turn it on and see if it works. One sec. So, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So, in this specific patch, I really don't have anything. So, I really don't have anything crazy going on with Bassimilis, but as I'm going through my live set, I'll use one of two things with BIA, with Bassimilis. I'll just use the acronym for ease sake. Turn it down just a little bit. As I'm going through, I'll switch where the trigger and the pitch is coming from for BIA, depending on what it is that I want to do. So sometimes I'll use the BIA as a melodic synth voice, and I'll send it. Right now I have it going through the Mimeophon being heavily modulated to control rate and all that kind of stuff. But then also when I have the qubit Bloom in my case, Bloom sends out both gate and pitch CV, right? So I'll alternate between. There we go. Somebody said the Chaos Belgrade has been. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but I'll alternate between sending CV pitch from the voltage block and trigger from the Varigate, and also the Bloom gate and Bloom pitch CV, if that makes sense.
Sweet.
And it's pretty amazing. Like with Bloom is one of my favorite like pitch CV sequencers as of today. With the Bloom, you can program it up to 32 steps.
All right.
And then these knobs right here, these knobs, you can't really see them that well. But
Nice.
since Bloom is like it's called a fractal sequencer.
Okay.
You can turn up the fractals, you can send it on different paths, and you can mutate the actual sequence that you've written in. So thinking of it, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here with Bloom. Let me turn it off for a second. One second. So while we are talking about bass, we can kind of talk about melodies and all that kind of stuff. But let me just talk about Bloom for a second. So with Bloom, when you're writing your sequence, you think of it in terms as if it was a tree. All right. So the trunk of the tree is the initial sequence that you've written in up to 32 steps. Typically, I'll write in like a 4-step or 8-step sequence. You have that trunk of the tree, and then you start turning the fractal knob. The fractal knob, oh, it's not the fractal knob, I'm sorry, it's the branches knob. The branches knob then creates additional branches of the tree that send your sequence in like different, or create different sequences within your sequence.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Yeah.
and then with those branches, you have a path knob. Path knob is exactly what it is. It sends the branches in different directions, in different paths, if you will. All right.
Wow.
And then the third knob is the mutate knob, which mutates the sequence. All right. So yeah, I'm typically using Bloom. It's fantastic that Bloom has two gate outs and 2 pitch CV outs. Typically, I'm sending Bloom to BIA for like bass and or melodic sequences. And then in this specific patch, I'm also not in this specific patch, but usually I'm sending it to the qubit surface, which can be a number of things, and I'll get into that later.
Does Bloom have a quantizer in it? Are you able to keep everything locked to a scale this way, or how are you doing that?
Yes. So
that's awesome. Wow.
Bloom basically it's a shift function on Bloom. Hold on shift and select the scale. It gives you, I think it gives you 7 or 8 different scales. So like a major, a
nice,
minor, a couple pentatonics, like a world scale, whatever they're called. But yeah, it does stay quantized. It can be chromatic, it can be unquantized.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's cool. Like I have, like I said before, I have the variegate as my master clock. I'm sending clock from variegate out into my entire rig as well as Bloom. So Bloom is being clocked by variegate, and you can then, Bloom has an internal divider or multiplier, whatever you want to call it, so that you can then kind of vary up how it's triggering your synths or your drums or whatever, not drums but synths. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at. But yeah, in this specific patch, BIA is going into Mimeophon. Mimeophon is being heavily modulated. It's kind of be all over the place, and in a performance setting, I typically just be messing around with the knobs on Mimeophon. I'd be messing around with the knobs on BIA just to kind of vary up what the baseline is doing, and then I take it out, and like 5 or 10 minutes later throughout the live set, I'd bring it back in. I'd reconnect Bloom to the BIA. I'd bring it back in, still going through Mimeophon, but like with a melodic patch.
Sweet.
And then have like bass coming from somewhere else, whether it's like surface or it's a bass loop coming from sample drum. So, yeah.
We still have your camera missing on that first camera, Trovarsi, but your second camera was working just fine.
I know today is like my this pesky little camera in this corner. I don't know what the hell, but I'll turn on my other one. But I might just be sitting in a weird position. But you guys just have to deal with it. You see?
Yeah, no worries.
You see my system. How about that in my back? That's fine. But no, let me ask you guys this. This is gonna be weird for a second, but let's talk about bass. Like I know we kind of talked about it before when we were setting up, trying to do the talked about doing this stream. Like, do you tackle that first and write around it? I'm
more of a get the drums. I started out actually as a drummer. I started playing the drums when I was about 5, and I stopped like in my late 30s because kind of back pain and just really getting into the electronic stuff and not really trying to play in rock and roll bands that much anymore. But I typically just get a really serious rhythm bass, and then I start seeing like how the bass will fit into that rhythm. Can I go ahead and take a moment and talk about my bass then?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Let me switch my cam here, and I'll just turn the audio up a little bit. What I'm using for the bass is I'm using the FM algorithm in the Platts module, and I can get really dirty with it if I, turn up the FM amount. You can also kind of sculpt the frequency on this side. So I can sort of, sculpt the sound of it in real time, but I'm sequencing the Platts module using the mimetic digitalis. I'm running that through a quantizer to keep everything locked to scale, and I have 8 different patterns that I can just scroll between at any time. And I can just change those up and kind of interact with it. But one of the really neat things about the bass in this patch is that I'm actually taking it out from the Platts module here, and I'm running that into the quad cutoff module from Mazatron. And when I take the trigger output from the mimetic digitalis and I plug it into the CV input of this quad cutoff, check out what happens to my bass sound. It sort of gives it sort of like a tight envelope shape. And when I pull that out, 2, 3, 4, it sort of goes back to that really loud and beefy sort of bass. And I can switch that pattern at any time by just, calling up another pattern on the mimetic digitalis. So I've got 8 sequences here that are all tuned into the patch, and I can just switch between those in real time and do a little bit of tweaking in real time.
That's awesome.
Have you tried randomizing the mimetic?
Absolutely. And that is how I got all of these patterns. I literally just hit load and shred and randomize it until something sounds pretty good with the patch. And then I just save that and go with it. I really, really am in love with the mimetic digitalis for creating the melodic part of my bass sequences. I'm literally just running it through a quantizer and I'm just randomizing it. I haven't even taken the time, not even once, to get in there and program a sequence by hand. I'm just randomizing it until something sounds good and going with that.
Dean, it almost feels like when you plugged in that other module, I think it was into mimetic, or it was either into Platts. Sorry if it kind of eludes me right now.
Yeah, no worries.
it almost gave it like a 303, a TB 303 vibe.
Right. It really changes the tone. It kind of tightens it up and just does this sort of filter envelope thing. I really like doing that. It's like the strangest thing you wouldn't necessarily think to put a clock input into the CV of a filter. You might use an LFO or an envelope or something, but I'm finding that clock trigger especially if it's really in sync with your master clock, can do amazing things when I plug it into the CV in on a filter.
The beauty of modular.
Right.
You can plug anything into anything. If it does something cool, if it doesn't, then it won't break.
Right.
That's true.
Do you want to talk about what you did for some bass in your patch, Trovarsi?
Sure. I think that, well, for my bass, I went with these mini mod, the vintage, the VCO right here. I don't know if and it's running through this transistor ladder filter. And I just want to do something a little arpy. I mean, just try something different. I'm usually a bouncy techno.
Sure.
Sounds amazing.
This is like one of the newer modules that I got, so I thought But for me, when we start getting into more, talking about more melodies and melodic stuff, I guess we can kind of segue in, and then why don't I just segue in?
Sure, absolutely.
So, a lot of times in general, even if I'm not writing something artsy or not, like I like to write my drums, and then I like to write the other elements. So so over here I have so I like to write this other subtle elements. I can't tell if you guys can hear that or not.
Absolutely. Totally fair.
I'll start writing that. Like I'll write my percussion first. I like to create the variation in with my hi-hats, whether it's like using this Logic module or using resets on a sequencer. And then I'll start adding in these other elements like this, like the Deckard's voice and I use the bass as the response. So I'll write like a bunch of call things, and then I'll write the bass line later to kind of respond.
Wow, that's an awesome workflow. I love that.
Yeah, I try to approach like every sound that I add, it has to have a response to.
That's awesome. Everybody listen to what she's saying really carefully. This is gold right here. This is really good stuff.
So see how the bass is like in between. So I try to
absolutely
pushing and pulling on each other. That's the goal. I mean, we don't always do it perfectly, but I mean the goal is to have that kind of push and pull on each of the elements. And then I think maybe it comes from like playing the bass or playing the piano and playing the bass. Like you have to when you play the bass guitar, it's like you got to create the groove. It's got to fit.
Sure.
So some people write it first, but I don't know. For me, it just happens to work better for me because I gravitate to these other elements, like those weird textures or like those, in techno, those hypnotic those triggered things that are happening.
Hey Trovarsi, I've been gassing over the mini mod modules forever.
Oh God.
I feel so. If I'm not mistaken, they're based on Moog circuitry, right?
Yeah.
That
one more oscillator now. I cheated myself by only getting one.
the mini mod VCO, I mean, for bass lines is everything in my opinion. It's a must-have if you're using it specifically for bass lines. Obviously, you can use it nicely for melodic patterns and stuff, but man, once I figured out that there were analog synths out there back 15 years ago, when I made the switch from using just a DAW on a computer, Moogs were obviously the first ones that I discovered, and the sounds that were coming out of Moogs were just amazing. And then as I started getting into modular over the past 10 years, and then I discovered the mini mod modules, just hearing the fact that they're based on Moog circuit.
I basically have a very simple patch right now. Even just turning down these other.
Is it running through anything? It sounds like it's maybe going through a distortion, or is that just the module itself?
That is the module. Well, it's going through a discrete cascaded VCA first, and then out of the VCA into the ladder filter, which I think together they're just this harmonious.
Yeah.
And then for the other sound that I have here,
you hear a little reverb in the background there.
Yeah, I'm using the Desmosis Versio.
All right.
Of course, yeah.
All three of us have that one.
Yeah.
And
that's a really nice reverb.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me out there? I saw somebody in the chat, I think, said that they couldn't hear me. So I just want to make sure you guys can hear me.
You're a little bit in and out, but I can hear you.
I think because the way I don't know what the technical difficulty is all of a sudden, so I apologize for that.
All good.
But yeah, I think that's really something that I try to carry consistently, no matter whether it's you working with modular hardware or even in the box. It's all about adding those textures and elements and making sure that there's a call and response happening.
Yeah.
Right on.
Elements happening.
So not to throw us off on a tangent, but I kind of wanted to ask both of you guys a question. If you had some kind of processing chain within your case, right? So a lot of the folks that I talk to, some do, I don't, but just because of financial limitations. But a lot of folks have these processing chains within their cases that consist of compressors, EQs, they have specific mixing modules and all that. And obviously it's super important. When you're in a DAW, you're using compressors, you're using EQ, you're using mixing to make everything sound right. Whereas if you have a limited case like me, you kind of just have to play it by ear and make sure that the levels are straight. But for both of your guys' cases, and we can go off on this tangent. We don't have to. We can get back to the melodic stuff. I'm not sure how much time we're going to spend talking, but how do you guys approach that processing change, if at all?
Oh, I love that. I don't actually have those kind of modules, I would kind of like to have some sort of that extra processing, compression, limiting, EQ. Those would be fantastic things to have in the system for me personally. But I really don't. I don't have an EQ module. I just have filters. I don't have a compressor at this time. Don't have a limiter. I'm just sort of doing what you said. I'm just sort of trying to keep the levels as, you know, decent as I can. The bonus about the mixer that I chose for my main mixer, really, I chose the Bifaco Hex Mix, and I chose this one because it does have a 3-band EQ built into the channels. I've got a high, mid, and a low, and that really helps. But not all of my signals are routed into this mixer, so I only have control over still just a few of the actual channels that way.
Got it. Well, at least you have, you know,
it's really helpful to have something you can kind of go to. I mostly use that for just taming the low on the kick drum by like the tiniest amount either way if I need to.
Yeah.
Or like
and that makes all the difference. At least you're
right.
You're taking it a step further than I have it. Like with me, it's just mixing, but like the fact that you have the 3-band EQ capabilities for, I think it's 8 channels on the
6
channels, right? I mean that in itself is helpful when it comes.
Yeah, really helpful.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I do actually want to make a recommendation.
Cool.
If you have like I have the Muscle by DMD. That's fantastic.
I want 7 of them.
Is that a compressor?
It's a compressor. I use filters for shaping. It's a way to like EQ. ShackMat makes a really nice module that kind of just is like a low pass.
Okay.
And let's see, I'm trying to think if any, there are some other great ones out there, but that's like just basically a 2 HP module, and it has like a couple different shelves. So you just patch, patch maybe your lead line through it, for example. So then, another thing, which is another suggestion, I guess, would be like the Pons Asinorum is a great module.
I love it. I have it.
Back and release, but it's like LFOs. But what you can do is use those envelopes to sidechain.
What?
So,
okay, say that again.
So for my performance mixer, I use the WMD. In this case here, I have the Bifaco, which I love it. It's great because it has the 3 send and return channel, pre or post fader. For my performance case, I use the WMD mixer. And the cool thing about it is on the side of it, it has those, you can send CV to control panning or level. So one cool thing to
is that for every channel you've got CV over level?
Yes.
Oh,
so
man.
What you do is like take the Pons Asinorum or any envelope really, and just like use that to sidechain. That one's just cool because it just kind of, there's already 4 on that module. Sorry, you guys are looking at the top of my head, but yeah. So here, I'll stand up so it's like a little bit better. But yeah, no, that's a great module. But yeah, you can control level and panning with that. But that's like another way to I guess make room, you know.
Are you? Can I ask one tiny detail? Are you using the LFO to actually move, like basically virtually move that fader to create your sidechain? Awesome. All right.
So
or envelope rather, not LFO, envelope. Yeah.
On the topic of
you could make it interesting and use an LFO. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, if I clock that LFO to tempo, it should.
So Trovarsi, do you find yourself using the sidechain on the Muscle, on the WMD Muscle?
Not so much.
Not so much. Gotcha.
I have, but not so much.
Yeah, like
I just use it as like to give a good clean compressor. Somebody asked in the chat too, like about a good limiter. Have you guys heard of that? It's called Very Good Compressor or Very Good Limiter. If you Google it, there's like a company. It's like a box. It's like a hardware box. I think it costs like $200-300. But it's just like a little desktop thing. But I've had several friends recommend that to me. I can't find one right now. I think maybe like in Germany, I think you might be able, if you don't mind, you know, purchasing stuff overseas. I looked at Perfect Circuit last, they were sold out of it, but it's called like Very Good Compressor, Very Good Limiter. And it's just like, it's supposed to really beef up the sound and really
awesome.
like,
That's cool.
you know,
I'm curious if
performance.
I'm curious if there's any like actual limiting modules out there, and if like not, then are there modules that through creative patching can emulate what a limiter does?
I did actually quite a bit of looking for a limiter because that's kind of one of my go-to things when I'm producing in Ableton, especially with my snare drums. I really like my snare drums to hit maybe 1 or 2 decibels like too loud in the mix. I want them just to whack, you know what I mean? And so I'm typically just putting a limiter on those in Ableton, and I was looking for that sort of a workflow in my system, and I looked and looked and looked, and I really didn't find what I'm looking for. I've been working with Sean over at Mazatron trying to develop a limiter module actually. So we'll see what sort of happens there, because I really need some limiting in my case. Even just a little bit would be so helpful, even just on specific sounds.
Yeah.
You can check out this box then that I'm talking about.
Absolutely. I wrote it down.
So given that we all kind of perform house, techno, and all that, like, and not to dwell on the side chaining topic for
RNC. Sorry, not to cut you off. Somebody said it in the chat. RNC.
RNC. Really nice.
You're picking that up and posting it in there.
So once again, like with the side chaining component and the fact that we perform live techno, like you want to be able to bring back your kick drum and really have it like, oh, there it is. Okay. Really have it like thump when you bring it back in, right? So Mylar Melodies created a video. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Mylar Melodies created a video using maths to sidechain your kick drum and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, maths as a sidechain? And then so I watched it. I tried it within my case. I don't have it patched up that way right now, but I was like, what? I was like, the 1100th use of maths just became 1101.
Right.
Now a sidechain compressor. Yeah.
For sidechain specifically, I actually invested in this little pedal. I don't know if you can pull this right up to the camera here. This is the Pills pedal. It's called Pills, and it was on Kickstarter like last year. And basically, it's a sidechain pedal for guitarists or any sort of musician, I guess. And it's a stereo pedal, which is what I'm talking about. It's stereo in and stereo out. And then you just route any trigger signal you'd like to in here. And you can adjust like the threshold and the amount of pump. And you can get your sidechain pump just by turning the pedal on. Awesome. And I'm using this with my system sometimes to route signals out of the system and into this against. I'll just take a duplicate of the kick drum signal and route that out into the input here, and boom, sidechain. But I mean, it's extra stuff you've got to set up. You've got to have a module that'll get your signals out of the system and back into the system. I'm using the Strymon AA1 to do that. And then you've got extra cables, and you got to plug the pedal in. It's not passive. You got to plug it in. So if you don't mind setting up that extra stuff, I can definitely get sidechain.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I've kind of found myself just not bothering to set it up because it's just extra stuff.
El Nasty Butler mentioned that Schwayman. I think we privately talked about Schwayman. Schwayman makes that like beast of a compressor module. It's like it takes up an entire row of a cable, and if you can find it, it'll probably be like $3,500. I mean, regardless, just on the Schwayman point, like they make such quality modules. If you can get your hands on Schwayman, so Schwayman.
So Dean, do you want to talk about your like your melodic?
You guys, I didn't program any melodic content other than the bassline. I wanted to leave plenty of room in the chat for everyone to get to talk about their patches. So I kind of kept mine on the simple tip. It's really just lots of drums and then the bass patterns. And that's all I've got.
And someone just want to put this up there too. Yes, you can use a VCA for sidechain.
See, that's a great idea as well. Yeah.
Yes. I'm always like I'm always apologizing to myself. I have the IntelliGel Quad VCA, and out of all the times that I'm patching things up and making video posts or patches or performing live or whatever, I'd say I've used the quad VCA as a VCA probably like 5% of the time, which is like
Wow.
a cardinal sin of modular. They say you can't have enough VCAs.
I know. I just have all I have is a 2 HP VCA. That's all I've got, and all this just one tiny little.
Yeah. There's some
I
crazy.
really have found some uses for it, though. I need more for sure.
Maybe the chat can chime in on the folks that have modular on how they use VCAs. Like,
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure. Here's well, I popped one up. That was a good recommendation.
Sequence through VCA. So Brett put up a cool one. Sequence through VCA nursing envelope that opens slow. Yeah.
Try that too.
Yes.
That's the great thing about modular. You just like, there's more than one way to do, anything. So.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's why it's really fun getting to talk to other patchers about this kind of stuff, because if you put the same system in front of all three of us, we're going to approach it differently, and that's the beauty of this. I mean, it's so interesting.
Exactly. Now, I mean, even though we don't typically have we don't have a melodic sequence patched up, as this was like more of a techno focused stream, we can talk about how we approach melodic sequencing. Like I can get back on my Bloom pedestal if you guys want, but whatever. I personally have been doing like a lot of melodic patches and posts on Instagram.
Yeah, your melodics are on a whole other level. How are you sequencing those? Is that the variegate as well?
So it's variegate and Bloom working simultaneously.
Wow.
But as far as the melodic sequencing, it's Bloom, and like I talked about before, the branch. I can barely reach it.
I just want to jump in real fast and say, if you guys aren't following Craig on Instagram, be sure to follow his account on Instagram. He's posting some amazing stuff these days, and the melodic content and the visual content is fantastic. You definitely want to get subscribed up to his Instagram.
Thanks. Yeah, I have two Instagrams. Like I have the PatchNode where I've been reposting for the past 2 years everybody's different post videos and stuff. But like I also have my personal page, PatchNode Music, where I post my own stuff. But yeah, like what I typically have going within my melodic patches is Bloom being sent out to do 2 different synth voices. And I'm basically modulating the branches knob and modulating the path knob. So different branches of my sequence are being created and being sent on different paths. So the melody is ever changing, ever evolving, generative. One of the great things about modular, being able to just like set it and forget it, create generative music, and just sit there and watch your patch go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, God, Bloom is pretty amazing when it comes to melodic sequencing. I'm like a really big stickler for, it's important to have a static sequence, like an 8-step, 16, 32-step static sequence. But with Bloom, it'll just go on for hours and hours and always sound different, always sound good, as long as you get everything in key.
Awesome.
And, I don't know. I feel like it's a highly underutilized module when it comes to pitch sequencing. And what the comparison I've made to Bloom, I don't know who out there has Marbles by Mutable Instruments, but I almost feel like Bloom is Marbles, but with the ability to write in your own sequences.
Wow.
And then expand on them.
Huh.
So
like I said before, I've been using the 512, and I'm not going back from that.
Hey, so Trovarsi, like we talked about it briefly on the 512 sequencer.
Yeah.
With the 512, so obviously you can write in sequences similar to Bloom, but then I read a little bit about it, and it has like an evolve function. I'm not sure if you've kind of explored that yet, but I think that would be the like generative aspect of the 512 sequencer. Just create ongoing like sequence.
Speaking of sequencers, have you guys seen that new Erica synth sequencer is about to finally ship? I saw a video on that was like months old, and I was just like blown away by what that thing can do. Everything basically, right? I mean, like ratchets, probability, all of that stuff.
They had it I think I saw it at either KnobCon or NAMM. last year.
Mm.
At NobCon, I think it was even. And it's sort of like the Renee 2 or similar. You know what I mean? Like how it's like each step,
Like you turn the knobs.
it all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, each step you can choose whether it's on or off, whether you have access. But then
It just sounds magical to me.
I mean, imagine using that sequencer simultaneously with Ericsson's drum sequencer, the 909 style sequencer that they have for drums.
Well, right. Yeah. Forget about it.
Imagine having both of those side by side being sent to your entire case. Like, oh my God. Sorry, I'm gassing.
That's
hard.
the kind of, I think that's the kind of thing though, where you really want to like program all the elements out like beforehand though. Isn't it sort of that sort of workflow? Like you're really going to do a lot of stuff in advance as opposed to in real time. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
my first sequencer was the Ericsson's drum sequencer.
Oh wow.
And yeah, no, it was fun. I liked it. I liked that you could see, you know, you had the nice big buttons to kind of.
yeah, those buttons are awesome. They look like old
like the computer. Yeah.
Yes, it's super nostalgic to me.
your pattern length and ratchet. And then I went from that, and then I went to the Metron. And I'm more of a visual person. I like that on the Metron, you can see at least 4 channels at a time. You can, you know, it reminds me of electron sequencing, which I'm a big electron.
How many bars does that Metron sequence? Is it a 1-bar thing or is it?
No, you can do
up to 8.
Up to 8. Oh,
you can also like think of how you use because I know you use like the Digitac. So you're using like probability and
oh yeah,
you can do the same. You can do that on the Metron too.
That's awesome. So it's a 4-track sequencer, the Metron.
It's 16.
16. Oh gosh.
Yep.
Yeah. And then yeah, no, it's dope. You know, this little setup is like golden. Like I use
awesome.
You can use the Metron for melodic and drum, and the 12 you could use it for melodic and drum. It has like a breakout, but for me I like to use the Metron just for that, like, you know, for drums, resets, gates, like just kind of creating variations. And for the 512 I like it just because, again, it's just preference. Like I'm a visual person. I like that you can see
the notes,
notation,
right,
octave you're in. And then what you were saying too, Craig, is like you can just do so much variation. It does have probability on each step too. And then it has where you're getting into the sub modulation levels is where you're like starting to, you know, kind of get that, like, you know, generating pattern sort of.
Can you, when you switch patterns like sequences on the 512, is it one of those things to where it like waits till the next downbeat and switches, or is it an immediate switch?
You can change it to do either.
Cool. Because with the mimetic digitalis, I have to be like really on it if I care for it to be, because it's not like I can't just hit it and then it'll change on the downbeat. When I touch it, it just changes. Yeah.
So Gold Calb in the chat, I don't know if you guys want to throw it up. He mentioned the use of the Renee and the Variegate simultaneously. It's a really good. He's making a really good point, or they're making a really good point.
Nice.
Sweet.
Extracting and adding the signals in precision adder and adding octave jumps from the Dofer quantizer. Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Screenshot that one. Yeah. Awesome point, Gold Cab.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many great sequencers out there. I think you just have to really find what works for you. Like,
sure.
Like,
but no, Trovarsi, I agree with you. The whole visual aspect, like having that visual aspect of sequencers is super important. I'm also really visual, and like the limited amount of time that I had the Metron, like it was just amazing. It was amazing being able to see the pages of the sequence that you've written in. Also having one of those Volteras was a must. You know, being able to write in your CV sequences with the Voltera was awesome.
And choosing your you can make your own scale, like choosing your scale.
Exactly.
Would you use a lane from the Voltera to send? I mean, would you use one of its like sequencing lanes to sequence the CV? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, but you don't take away from your pattern. So for example, like if you sent out like channel 1, for example, and
Right.
you bass line there, you would turn the knob to the Volterra, and then on that step, you can program a note.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's not like you have to use one track for gate and then another track for sequence.
Very similar. The Volterra brings it even closer to
Wow.
electron sequencing. The
Wow.
thing.
I'm going to throw up a question in the chat. Can I add the mimetic digitalis? Do you need? Yes.
Yeah, it spits out a really like 8-octave range of CV to begin with. I'm using the 410 or A10 4 HP attenuator module from WMD Devices, just to kind of narrow that range and keep it more like in a 1 to 2 octave scale as opposed to such a wide range. But I also found that sending that wide range can kind of be a neat thing if you're sending that out for CV and not pitch information. It just sort of depends. I really like that sort of, I know we're talking about being able to see visually the sequencers, but I really like the mimetic because it's just such a random thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm ever going to take the time to really get in here and program it. I just find that, putting it through a quantizer and just seeing what happens is kind of like, that's a really great way to generate those happy accidents for me.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm
I programmed like the step by step on the mimetic digitalis.
Wow.
Little, but what you get from it by doing that, but I really prefer the randomization.
Yeah.
Like now I like to use the mimetic, and I send it to like opening and closing decays, other do other things for me. It's like the ghost hands sort of philosophy with that.
Love it.
Yeah, and then that way it kind of keeps the textures. I use that to keep the textures moving.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like on the topic of the mimetic, like I'm definitely gonna get a mimetic one of these days, but I feel like the voltage block satisfies whatever it is that the mimetic does. Like I feel like it sucks that voltage block takes up so much space. I think it's like half the size of the mimetic. But the cool thing about the voltage block, it has 16 built-in scales. So you can also...
Oh, that's nice to have that quantizer built in.
So I was like debating. I was like, do I get rid of voltage block and then get mimetic to save space within my case? And like finally I came to the conclusion, like when I'm able to, I'm just going to add mimetic and make it work somehow, because both of them have their place within a patch, So
nice. Yeah, because you could even use like the voltage block as like a preset.
Yes.
Which I think is cool.
Yep.
Like is you like saving voltage and then just kind of jumping to that pattern.
Exactly. Saving sequences and stuff. Like I only have the Varigate 4 Plus, but the Varigate 8 Plus working in conjunction with the voltage block. I think Varigate 8 Plus has something called song mode, where you'll be able to take that preset saving even further and like have entire songs saved, as far as like drum sequences and pitch sequences all working together. So yeah, Varigate doesn't, the 4 Plus doesn't have that, but it still works well with the voltage block. So yeah,
cool.
I'm grateful for that.
I just want to thank everyone in the chat for joining us and other
input. For sure. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us today.
Does anybody have any other questions about any modules that you have or have not seen on any of these cases? Or any other questions or even suggestions, like please drop them in the chat. I know we're coming up a little over an hour, right, guys? Yeah.
Or about an hour and 15 minutes. Good chat so far.
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
I've got a couple of modules that I made some notes on. Thanks, guys.
and this is really cool. I think I think this is a cool concept to potentially continue with, and not just limited to techno performance, but really just,
absolutely,
really just how we patch with specific modules, or like case configurations or whatever. We can talk about this offline, but I think it's a really cool concept, and hopefully everybody has kind of felt the same way. We've been getting a lot of feedback from the chat, so yeah.
Cool.
Anybody out there?
I don't know. I feel like, did we cover all the things that we wanted to talk about, or?
I think we did. I don't really have anything to share in my patch, for instance, because I've shared all of that. Can we talk maybe about what Craig was using for the chords in your patch, or did we cover that in the beginning? That I'm
Are you
Uh,
talking to me or Craig?
for Craig, he was using some chords in the patch that sounded pretty awesome.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I was using a chord stab that was coming from the sample drum. It was
Man,
that.
I'm gonna have to look further into that. You're getting so much use out of that. That's great.
Yeah, I mean the sample drum's amazing. You can do a lot with it. It has that like little screen with visual feedback on it. It has slicing capabilities. So
That's
you
so
can,
cool.
it's really cool. Just to go off on a tangent, but like you can slice up. Let's say, for example, you load a 8 bar or 4 bar or whatever loop into the
Mm-hmm.
drum, and it's a melodic sequence in the same key. Obviously, you can slice it up to 32 slices,
Wow.
and then change the direction at which those slices are being triggered, right? So you can, the cool thing, you guys were talking about randomization via
Mm-hmm.
magnetic, right? So
Right.
on the sample drum, you can switch it for the slices to play randomly. So
Wow.
if you have 32 slices, if you have 32 slices sliced up of a melodic sequence or a drum sequence or whatever, you can have that random, and then whatever's triggering it is going to cycle through it randomly. So you have different parts of the sequence being
Oh,
played. You know, I mean,
that's really cool. Yeah.
imagine, imagine the possibilities of just like a simple melodic sequence being randomly triggered via those slices, being sent into something like the Dismodus Versio or the Mimeophone being modulated. I mean, imagine you could just have that running for hours, and it would
Sure, absolutely.
be dynamic.
Yeah.
So
It's a great suggestion
yeah,
too.
but other than that, as far as chords are concerned, I mean, the only like chord capability that I have is either putting a few modules together, a few synth voices together, or the chord mode of Platts, which is
Right. Okay. Yeah, I really like that mode of Platts as well.
oh, we got a question.
Yeah. Sample drum
Ooh.
too. I'm gonna say Bitbox
Yes.
say too,
Yeah.
but that's
And
just
why though? For someone like me who doesn't know the difference.
well, I think just like in terms of flexibility, like number one, first and foremost, you have a touch screen. So
Mm,
the big box, or whether it's the big box or even the micro, you have 8 on the micro, 16 on the Bitbox.
wow.
But so you can make your own presets, so kits. So imagine like you can,
Mm,
whether the 8 or the 6, let's talk about the 8, you can make those kits. It has DJ style filters. You can put them on each individual.
nice.
You can slice within that particular sound. So meaning like imagine you have the 8 on number 1, you could put a loop, you could launch it as a loop. The next one, you can maybe you want to do some slicing or
Mm.
granular. It does granular
Oh,
synthesis.
wow.
You
Mm,
poured into it, so it samples. I mean, it just
yeah,
yeah.
that's cool.
When I mean,
Like, yeah, it's
when it comes to like figuring out which sampler you're going to drop into your case, or which samplers, if you're capable, if you have the capabilities, like if it were up to me, I would have gotten something like the Bitbox because it has 8 channels or 16 channels.
right.
Somebody in the chat also asked about the Squid Sample. I'm eventually gonna get either the Bitbox or the Squid Sample, but in the time for the time being that my case is so small, the sample drum doesn't take up as much space. It's a little smaller than the Bitbox Micro. While it only has 2 channels, it's still really useful. But like if I had to redo it, I'd get a sampler with more channels on it, just like to expand the capabilities of
I
my.
think especially now they came out with the micro. I mean, because before it was a little bit hefty, rack space. The Bitbox, you know what I mean, the original. But the micro is like, what is it, like 12? I don't know, 12 or 14,
Is it?
14 maybe?
That's not much.
Wow,
I mean, pretty small for what it can do.
that's
You
true.
know what I mean?
8
Like now, like
channels.
they kind of really worked on slimming down the
Yeah.
size. It's pretty cool.
While we're on the topic of this of samplers and Squid Sample, and cut me
Yeah.
off at time. So with the Squid Sample, I haven't like really, I haven't dug into, I haven't read much about it, watched many videos on it, but like does it show you the waveform, and are you able to slice on the squid sample, or is it kind of just limited to dropping hits into one of the 8 channels and just triggering them? Like, does it go deeper?
From my experience, I did a video actually for Perfect Circuit with it. It was pretty fun.
Okay.
And you can change the end point. You can loop. And the samples, it's not like the Erica Synth's drum sample where you can put like this lengthy sample in and like chop up random.
Sure.
It's not like that. It's like, imagine like you have specific kits and they have 8 sounds, and then you can, within those one shots, so they're one shots. And then on the one shots, you can change, you know, like where it starts at the end of the one shot. You can change the decay envelope. I mean, there's some other things you can do too. Like a few of the channels have CV control. You can assign, they have a couple of assignable.
Awesome.
Yeah, the one, I mean, and then you can like sample directly in, which I thought I had fun doing that. Like I just plugged my phone into it and I used that Koala app. Yeah. And then it's like sampled directly onto like one of the channels.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many like good samplers and things out there. It just depends really what you want to, what your goal is, you know, like not you, but just anyone, you know, like
sure.
Really like the micro because of the whole like sampling CV and stuff like that, which I haven't sampled.
Right.
It samples CV?
Yeah, they sample CV.
That's a new one for me. That's cool.
Yeah.
So it samples the data, then you can send the CV out to somewhere else?
Yes.
That's crazy cool, though. That's really cool.
That's really cool.
Wow.
Channels have
might have corrected me, so thank you. All channels have assignable CV. On the squid sample?
Well, that's even better then.
Clarify just to make sure that if he's referring to.
Well, I know that on the sample drum, so sample drum has 2 channels, and you can go into the menus of sample drum and assign CV to like 3 CV inputs per channel, which can control a multitude of features. Like you can assign one. So the sample drum has built-in effects, by the way.
Man, that's awesome. I'm really losing out on none of these features are in the Ramble. Like none of these features.
Ramble has effects. Ramble has effects, if I'm not mistaken.
No. Well, I mean, it has a filter and some bid crushing, which is nice, but.
So the cool thing about it, so you can assign 3 CV inputs to each channel, which can control, you know, the mix of the effects. It can control the attack or the decay. It can, what I do this a lot with a sample drum. I'm gonna give one of my secrets out, whatever. So I'll load 3 drum loops into one of the channels of sample drum. I'll assign sample change on one of the channels of the 3 drum loops that I loaded up, and I'll have CV going on it, and everything is sliced up, obviously between 32 slices, and then it'll cycle through each of the 3 loops, but at different times. So it'll play loop 1, loop 2, loop 1, loop 2, loop 3, loop 1. Like
that's awesome. I love that kind of stuff.
That's a creative way of using that.
Yeah, the fact that I figured it out, like I'm really into like broken beat, Aphex Twin style, like beat making, and you know, once again, given my limited case, I'm not able to get crazy with it. But with the sample drum, either loading one-shot samples or loading loops in and then slicing the loops up and then CV modulating the sample change, you're able to create those like crazy, like all over the place kind of break beats.
Can it change what loop is playing, like in mid loop?
Yes.
Ooh, here's a tidbit.
Whoa.
By William.
Okay. All CV.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. All 4 CV channels could be assigned to any, so I can double or quadruple up the CV?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, William. All right. Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Shout out to William Paul.
That is fantastic. I did not know that. I thought it was 1 per channel. That is really awesome.
Yeah.
I need more hours in the day to play with a lot of this gear, if you guys haven't noticed.
So we had a question up top from Jace Castle on the Moog D fam. I don't have the Moog D fam.
Oh yes, here you go. I didn't want to. There.
That's okay.
That's the one you're referring to, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about hybrid systems, so using Eurorack with hardware with your computer. So, I mean, yeah, why not put a MIDI in there?
Yeah, I mean there are modules out there that have that, whether it's like a 4-pin or however many pin MIDI in, or it has like a USB that sends MIDI information into specific modules or modules that are made with it. Like there are modules out there, so yeah. Agreed.
There was another question back. I just didn't want. I kind of want to.
Oh, real fast. Speaking of MIDI in, that's actually kind of been a thing for me with the Lifeforms SV1B from Pittsburgh Modular.
Oh, yeah.
It's meant actually to be made, to be played with MIDI in. It's not necessarily as easy to use if you're only using CV. Down here at the bottom, you plug in a 5-pin MIDI dongle, and then you're controlling it with CV, and it's pre-wired to go through its, different modules that are involved. But if you're just plugging into it from gate and CV, it doesn't actually work the same way, and you would need to use the modules completely individually. It's a little strange. So to get it fully connected up to my system, I need to take CV and transfer that to MIDI using the Bafaco CV thing module, and then that MIDI talks to the unit.
Sure.
I find that kind of weird. I wish it had a standard CV and gate input as well as the MIDI input, and not just that MIDI input, if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
On the main mod, I mean, you can route CV and gate into it, but only individually, not as it's pre-wired for.
I got you.
Okay.
You have to patch it.
Yes, you'd have to patch it
individually.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Here's another question that we have in the chat. Tips regarding recording a jam. Do you record on a PC recording device or what?
That's a great question. I'm actually really excited to answer that, because what I've got on the way is the 1010 Blue Box, and I'm hoping to start being able to record my stuff in multiple tracks if I want to, so then I can bring that into Ableton and maybe do a little bit of extra processing and whatnot. But currently, all I'm doing is just taking a stereo out and then just recording that, with whatever recording stuff I've got in the room. Like I'm using the Akai MPC Live a lot to record stuff.
Gotcha. How about you, Craig?
Yeah, what are you guys doing?
So personally, I do it a couple different ways. Obviously, like I have the 1U out module, the IntelliJ 1U out module going into my mixer, which then goes into Ableton. I just record that way for various reasons. But if I'm recording like an Instagram post, or if I'm just doing like a quick YouTube video, my mixer, I have the Zoom L8. I don't know if I can. Let me try this. Zoom L8.
Oh, sweet.
All right. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Gotcha.
So the cool thing about the Zoom L8 is that it has an output, and like an iPhone output, iPhone or Android output. And I just have my modular going into the mixer. The mixer is then sending via that iPhone or Android out back into my phone. So I just like do some simple EQing on the mixer, send it into my phone, and the video and the audio is recorded simultaneously. So I don't have to go back into Final Cut and match the audio up for a post. And,
nice.
It's cool. Like I should be doing it that way. I should be recording, video separately and Ableton separately, and then matching them up so I can, then master and EQ or whatever.
Right.
But I don't know. I like to put a lot of material out there, and I feel like it kind of hampers my my creative process if I'm in the mindset of like recording things separately. So the mixer. I've also like and Trovarsi, I think you have the ES8 or the ES9. I don't know if you to record. Yeah. So. But
I don't use it ironically for recording.
Oh wow. Okay.
No, I record a couple of different ways. So if it's just like a quick, Instagram thing, I'll do what you're referring to, which is I'll use like a mixer that has like a USB. A great app for that is that AUM app. Like you can plug any interface, actually use like a dongle, plug any interface to your phone, and then that you can get that direct audio to video.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a great app to have because you can actually even record audio into that app as well, and you can create channel strips.
Yep, it's literally the virtual routing environment to use on an iPhone or an iPad. Absolutely.
If I'm
AUM, everyone in the chat. AUM. If you don't have it, go get it.
Yeah, it's a dope app. If I'm doing like a video where I have to edit and do actual video, I record the video and the audio separate for sure. I record into a mix pre, the audio, and then I just record the video direct to the cameras, and then put it together in Premiere and chop it up that way. But for like live, like if I want to just record a jam, and like I think the last couple tracks I released, they were live recordings. And I just went out of my WMD mixer and went into like I have like a big 24 channel mixer. I went straight into that and just did stereo pair and just was like, it's going to be released like raw. Like, I mean, it was mastered, but I mean the recording, you know what I mean? Like the arrangement of the track. But I'm super excited that I recently picked up the DB25 by WMD because it attaches to the WMD mixer. So it's like that cool, nice breakout. So now I can use that and go break out all the channels from my WMD mixer
multi-tracking
to my interface, to my studio interface.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm excited to pick that up. I just got all the cabling.
So wait, so that WMD module, just to clarify, the WMD module via those, like, I forget what the connectors are called, those like thick connectors.
Yeah, little scuzzy things, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, DB25.
So
that may be what the connector is called. I'm
okay.
I know what you're talking about. Yes.
So like via that module, it talks to the performance mixer, which then allows your audio interface to recognize multiple tracks, right?
Yeah, well, because it's the DB25 module, so it connects to the back of the mixer.
Yeah.
And it has input plug. And so then I bought like 2 plugs that break out, like, so it breaks out from that plug and it splits out like 8 channels. So I got 2 because I have a 16 interface. So I'll plug those into the module and then it breaks out the 8 channels, and then I'll just plug those 8 quarter plug inputs into the interface, and then I can track it out as opposed to doing like stereo pair.
Yes. Okay,
that's nice.
I'm super excited. I'll probably work on it.
I mean, folks that I talked to out there, I think it was one of the guys that was in the chat. He left, Jay Hart, 1975. I saw him, and then Akil Adam, I'm sure. They both of them use the ES8 or the ES9 multi-track of their modular to send to Ableton or whatever. Like, I think that's the route I'll eventually end up going. And then Ableton can then send information through the ES8 or ES9 back into your modules if you want to send like CV information or pitch, whatever. So
awesome.
Totally. Yeah. And one thing that's cool with the ES8 is that it has the optical. So if you want to break it out later to like an interface, that camera, I don't know. I think but anyway, if you want to break that out to an interface, you're able to with the optical plug.
Okay.
So, and to answer Brett's question, it is pre-fader for the WMD, the recording that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to share, Dean, or like?
I think we've pretty much covered it today, guys.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a comment about the AUM. I live in AUM.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't you just release like a good iPad video too, Dean?
Yeah, I do lots of iPad content on my channel. In fact, I even have a video that talks specifically about how to record perfectly timed loops inside of
Oh, nice. I'll have to check that out.
It's really a game changer if you're like doing any recording on the iPad, or if you're using in conjunction with anything else to be able to record loops in real time and then assign those up to maybe a MIDI controller or something and be able to turn them on and off, or tweak effects that you assign your controller to or something. Absolutely.
Yeah, I dove into that app just like this over this past, several months, the whole quarantine thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've used that with the ES9, and it's like, I've had a lot of fun doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, with the modular, the ES9, and running it through the AUM.
Wow.
Different effects and yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Yes, I saw another comment in the chat. Forgive me if I mispronounce your Gold Club. Yes, the hex mix is the same thing. Even if you do record direct out.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just talked to Bifaco about that Hexpander. It's all pre-fader, and the effects are all that stuff too. So that's actually what I was looking for originally, was something that would be able to record all of my knob movements, all of my effects and movements, all of that kind of stuff. And if it doesn't record that information, it's not super helpful to me. That's why that blue box from 1010 is so exciting, because it's gonna just allow me to just plug in and go,
Yeah, and it has like that touch. It has a touch screen, so you can actually control your EQ and your
That's
fade.
awesome. Yeah, it's gonna be sweet, I hope. Oh.
Yeah. I'm excited for you to. I'm excited to hear what you do with it, because like it has all the reverbs, it has
Right.
delays, the EQs on there, and it's all touch screen. So
yeah, it's interesting how they approach like a mixing solution within that like form factor.
Totally, I agree.
So
it makes it compact, so you can just throw it in your bag and like play a live set, or like I could go to someone's house and track them really quickly.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff is totally a bonus.
Yeah, I'm definitely waiting for your review video.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, geez, guys, I don't know. Like, I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys joining up for the live stream today, and sharing all your knowledge with everyone as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Like, today is the day that my other camera decides to be weird, of course. Nuances, I guess, of live streaming, but
that's right.
we had fun here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having me too, Dean.
Yeah, sure. We're definitely gonna have to do this again, you guys.
Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for hanging out in the chat as well.
Cool.
All right, guys.
All right. I'll end the chat. Any last tidbit, Dean? I guess follow us all on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely check out some Instagram. I believe there's some links on the screen, but what I'll do is I'll put our Instagram links underneath this video as well.
Sweet.
Cool. All right.
Thanks for having us on.
Have a good weekend. Keep making music.
Yeah, much love, everyone. Much love.
See you guys.